When it comes to EVE Online, every player wants to know the most effective tactic available. You want to know the meta. The meta controls everything. It determines what will and will not happen. Knowing the meta will alter your views, make you question your reality. It might even make you laugh. And now, you're part of it. You're watching The Meta Show.
Good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this week's episode of The Meta Show. And I am really excited to get into the show today because we have some exciting guests here. Probably our biggest Meta Show, Dave, that we've had in some time with 5 different guests. And not only are these guests from different alliances and stuff in the game that we've talked to in the past, they're your CSM candidates. Some of them currently on our CSM council from 19, but they're your CSM 20 candidates. And for those of you in the Imperium, you might recognize some names there. We've got a couple who are not in the Imperium, but really looking forward to getting into the show today and talking to our guests. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Dave, let's go ahead and take it right into our main story or top.
It's back.
All right. Thank you, Dave. So as I screw that up, we're going to get right into this. I want to make sure we give all of our guests today, a platform to talk about their campaign. And I'm going to start out with our non-Imperium line guests here, Oz and Mick. Mick, I'm going to give the floor to you, sir. Tell our viewers who you are and what you're running on. What's your platform, Mick?
Wow. Well, first off, thanks for having me. It's good to see you again, Keith, as always.
Thanks, man.
I will start out by saying I am the quote unquote wormholer candidate for CSM 20. I've been enjoying my time on CSM 19, getting a chance to represent the community and make sure that they don't fall by the wayside, as has happened all too frequently in the past. CCP's been doing a great job. My goal, or platform, if you will, for the upcoming year would really be to build on the momentum that we've had so far from this year and have an opportunity to start actually generating what I like to refer to as medium scale content drivers or medium content drivers in wormhole space. Right now, we kind of suffer from the decision matrix of, are we going to have a skirmish or a brawl with this group, or are we going to evict them and shoot their structures? I think that's a bad gameplay loop. We've seen a really good reception of mechanics out in nullsec, things like, but not necessarily related to, um, ESS, skyhooks, things like that, that allow you to quote unquote ring the bell and be able to drive content that way. I would love to see something like that come to wormholes. And so I've been spending the latter part, or I guess the last half of my last year on CSM working with CCP to try and theory craft ways to do that. And I'm hoping to kind of turn that into hopefully a reality come CSM 20.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. Mick, one of the questions I have is something I've heard several times, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in this. I don't think when wormholes were originally created, right? Were they initially designed to live in? Is that correct?
I mean, it depends on who you ask. You know, that's a lot of times it's like if you ask the wrong person, they'll say no, wormholes were never meant to be lived in. They were just meant to be a thing that you checked out for a period of time. And then in
Yeah.
typical Eve fashion, we were told don't push the red button, and then we decided to slam it repeatedly. So for like the next, 1,000 days in a row. So yeah, now they've been largely solved, which is another thing that I think could this new type of content drivers could help mix up, and would love to see what kind of things we could do and expand upon this space.
Yeah, and what are so going through your list and some of the things like you've accomplished during your CSM tenure, from removing drive-by escalations, which there was a time when I lived in wormholes as well, and I remember those being a thing on escalating on getting the Avengers to whatever show up and that kind of stuff. Requiring a capital to be present for drifter battleship to spawn, that kind of thing. Overall, what you've accomplished in 19, it's a pretty good list. And Dave, you have that up on the
Yep.
on the chat. I dropped it in the chat for everybody to view. But it's a pretty expansive list. How does that drive into your CSM 20 and what you want to do here for CSM 20 if you were to get back on the campaign?
Yeah, so like a lot of this work that we've done this year has been a result of the feedback that I did prior to my CSM 19 run, in garnering feedback from like town halls with a bunch of different groups, and then using that feedback to try and address sometimes even decade old complaints, problems, or QL issues with wormholes. What we've done with this year has just been kind of a huge QL upgrade, uh, changes to the UI UX, making things a little bit easier to digest, and really having an opportunity to show people that wormholes, while they are the scary, spooky place, they don't have to be misunderstood or confusing. So now that it's kind of been modernized, now it needs to actually have the content that shares with that modernization. So that's what I want to do. I want to build off these complaints areas that have been fixed and turn it into something that has new life inside of it.
Awesome. Awesome. And then, looking at you talk about those town halls. Is that something you're going to take into next year if you're CSM 20, just continuing that trend to get that feedback from the community? Like, how can our voters expect, or how can the players in the game expect you to interact with the community there?
Yeah, so as a result of my getting on CSM 19, I created the Wormhole UN. It's been like a wormhole focused community that is open to anyone, but it's largely surrounding wormhole topics. There are CSM, in fact, both Zintage and Oz are currently in the Wormhole UN to help
Awesome.
facilitate feedback and discussion around some of these questions. And then there's also CCPers who are there that are, sometimes lurking, sometimes participating. And it's been a great feedback loop. So what we've been doing is we did those town halls. We got on CSM 19. We continued that feedback loop. We have meetings every 6 to 8 weeks to kind of talk about the latest and greatest and how folks are feeling, kind of get the vibe check. What we're doing during this CSM run, I'm doing the exact same thing. Hey, how has the last year been? What's good? What's bad? What are some things that you wish you had seen? What's something that maybe we could see going into next year? Questions like that to really kind of drive conversation and get those creative juices flowing. It's been awesome. Like some of some of the people in wormhole space, and this is just probably true of the greater Eve community, are some of the most creative people I've ever talked to. Some of these ideas are like some of the coolest things I've ever heard. They may take like 10 years of dev time to actually make happen, but they're super, super cool. Um, and so the goal is, again, like, continue with those town halls, and if I get on CSM 20, we're going to be doing the exact same thing we did with CSM 19. We're going to have those regular meetings. We're going to have those feedback loops. We're going to have interaction with CSM and with CCP. And we're just going to keep on pushing for those changes.
One of our comments in chat: bring Antiblexes to wormholes. Yes, that's what we need, are Antiblexes and wormholes.
How would that
What
even?
you know what to get
Back it in,
to
boys. We
regular
solved
space, right?
wormholes.
That's right. You could just go direct from goon staging to a C5 to go farm for the day and go back all the time, as long as you
With
own the
unlimited
wormhole
mass and no
soft.
fatigue.
That's right. 100%. This sounds like a great idea. I'm glad we had this discussion and we conceded here today on the Meta Show. We're going to put Antiplexes and wormholes. No, that's awesome stuff, Mick. What do you think is the most exciting thing if you were to be elected today? You're going to be a CSM 20 that you would get started working on right away. The first thing you'd want to go and tackle.
Oh gosh, the first thing. Well, it's hard to like pick because the list is pretty great. There's probably two different things. One, the content driver that I'd pick would be the combo, like the infamous J Hub and Granary combo, which essentially serves as like an opportunity to ring the dinner bell, right, and try and get folks to undock to defend their stuff, without necessarily requiring refereeing their citadels and deploying for 4 days to do whole control and kill their citadels. But the other one that really needs some love is industry. just industry. In wormhole space, like there's R4 moons, so there's no difference in mining in wormhole space versus mining in HiSec. And I would love to see some kind of moon pass and some industry improvements that are allowed into the wormhole space. Also, there was a comment made in a meeting that I had yesterday where someone was like, bring ice compression back to the porpoise. And I will go ahead and publicly state now that I agree with that. And I think we should have ice compression on the porpoise.
That is a very controversial statement to make, Mick. Is ice compression on a porpoise. I personally know, like, I'm not the person to talk to about industry or mining. I know nothing about it, but sounds great. All right. Well, thank you, Mick. We're gonna go on to our next guest, Oz. Oz, you are an economy expert. Are you an economist? Is there like some background there to why you're so like crazy about like reading through your CSM posts? It seems to be mostly focused around the economy, which my idea of economy and EVE Online is swiping credit cards. So like you're gonna have to help me here.
I am. So I've been playing the game for 20 something years. For those that don't know me, I've always been finance and economy focused. Yes, I started out as my real life career as a financial analyst and also a stock broker for a while, and then I moved into data analysis, management consulting. So I've always been on the analytical side, always been on the finance business side. So it's no surprise that from the beginning I started creating spreadsheets that compare regional market prices and everything when people weren't doing that. So 20 plus years ago, and or at least not everyone. Probably Angry was if he was alive. And but 5 years ago I started also streaming and creating content for EVE Online, and I have several formats where I cover the EVE economy, like the Oz Report, where I do a weekly look at the EVE economy, but also the Oz Tank, which is like a Shark Tank type of show for EVE Online, and then I also have various guides where I explain how to use the Excel add-on and that sort of stuff. And and since then I've just really started focusing more on the improvement of the game and the community rather than my own individual gameplay. And that has led me to now serve in my second consecutive CSM term. And I'm running again because I feel like there's a lot of open things, still open topics that we haven't addressed, simply because some things just take a lot of time to implement and to fix, quote unquote. And so if you're looking at things like, I don't know, Metanox moon mining, or even the new exploration updates, or even bringing more rorquals back into space, which we still haven't really achieved, then I feel like there's a lot of things that I can still contribute, and that's why I'm running again.
It's awesome. No, I love the insight there. What do you think, like, from a strictly economy standpoint? I think a lot of our players, even myself, somebody who buys mostly Plex to fund my addiction, which is EVE Online. What do you think, like, the biggest issue facing like the EVE economy is right now?
So the good news for that question is that we fixed a lot of the things that were ailing the EVE economy. So ignoring scarcity, which even me as an economy hated the implementation of that and what it did to the game. And so let's just not talk about that, but let's talk about the last 2 years. When I started the CSM term, the money supply was really out of whack, right? We had a rampantly increasing money supply. We had inflation in EVE Online, and I've, together with some of the other CSMs, not only on this show today, but also the other ones serving, we've been able to curb a lot of that. And that's really a testament to the CSM, because we brought a lot of those issues to this. I see Drake in chat here. Angry was part of it as well. We really pushed CCP to, quote unquote, fix things like the C5, C6 wormholes that were printing 20 trillion a month of blue loot. And then also in Podgman, we had a lot of issues with massive faucets leaking into the game. And what most players don't realize is that when you have that much ISK being pushed into the game by a very few amounts of players, it really hurts the ability, the purchasing power for all other players that are not involved into those activities. That's why botting, for example, is such a problem in these games like these. And so, that's where while we have put that under control, I think there are still there's still a lot of situations that we get into where CCP has ideas, some I can and some I can't talk about, but has ideas that would impact the economy in one way or the other, where we can totally, as a CSM, go in and say, hey, look, this is not a good idea because X, Y, Z. And that's why, I think on a daily basis, there's economic issues that we would want to tackle. One big thing, to answer your specific question, one big thing that we recently tackled was the whole, what ended up being a no FOMO dev blog that, CSCP was running so many New Eden store sales that were massive and that were having massive impacts on the Plex price, even to the point where Plex wasn't available, in larger quantities, even in JITA. And now with the global Plex market and CCP massively ramping back the amount of sales, we've I think stabilized that a lot and made EVE cheaper for a lot of people to play, just because we've gotten the Plex price under control much more, and that's something that I influenced in a big way.
That is, you mentioned sales. I was just thinking there always seems to be a sale on that store. I don't think I've seen a week go by where there isn't a sale for something on that store that has something to do with Game Time or Plex.
It's true. The only difference now is that now we're talking 10% or 15% sales, and not 2-for-1 extractor sales that will just crash the Plex market and make Plex price jump to 7 million for a week. So poor players in some countries aren't able to afford to play EVE Online, which is an issue.
Yeah. I have a question, and there's probably some of this you can talk to us about. The upcoming mining update, we've seen a little bit about what's going there. Do you think that's going in the right direction? You talked about mining upgrades in your forum post, specifically back the March 18th patch, that kind of thing. Do you think this helps? Do you think this helps achieve something is going in the right direction? Because I know a lot of our viewers and different people I've talked to feel like mining's kind of in a weird place right now, and just curious your thoughts on that.
I think it is in a weird place, and the March 18th patch that I was referring to, I think, was much clearer in what it was supposed to do and what it did, because we went to CCP and said, look, rocks are too small, it's too tedious, we need we need larger rocks, we need better sites, and that's what ended up being the tier 3 mining sites that were in the March 18th patch. This new patch that is coming, to be honest, I think it's trying a lot, and it's so complex in its idea, right? What it's trying to do, that I would have preferred something much simpler. So I think as an EVE community and as EVE industrialists and its miners, we're not complex people. Put bigger rocks in belts. Like, you don't need to make them prismatic or temporary or get them in here, get them out of there. Like, I think something much simpler would have done the trick, but okay, so now let's go and let's go and try this out. I'm not convinced yet that the next expansion is going to be the thing that saves mining, but I'm willing to wait a week and believe.
I was actually going to ask about that when we went on to the group discussion, because I was just looking at it, and it really looks like they're trying to do something with everything to do with mining rather than focusing on sorting particular things. They're just trying to add new stuff to every part of it, which is just going to add more issues.
And this is where the question, I think a lot of they want to get Rorks back in space, Oz. Is that something that's on your radar where you're like, what can we do from a industry standpoint, changes there to help get capitals or Rorks back in space?
100%. I think it's probably the number one thing that I'm advocating for is anything that brings raw experience, because I think it impacts the game positively in so many ways. It's not just for industrialists or for miners, or it's also larger ships, makes hunting, whaling more fun. It brings people out in space. It's good for everyone. So there is no option. There is no option B that doesn't have rorquals in space. We need a way, and I really, really do think that we have convinced CCP of that as well. I'm hopeful that is their goal as well. And now it's just trying different things to actually make it happen. I'm not sure this expansion is the whole way there, but maybe it gets us 20% there, and the March 18th patch got us 10% there, and maybe in the next year we can get another 30, 40, 50% there, and then we'll have it at some point.
Which, to your point, that's why you should vote for Oz, right? Because he's going to get us all the way there in 2020. Or not 2020, the CSM 20. We're going backwards in time now, boys. But backwards in time, I think, is where we want to go, right? Works were great again. Make works great again. So
yeah, honestly, like that's one big thing, and I always keep an eye out for the purchasing power of the player base and making sure that sinks and faucets are there. And I think, I said this on the CCP interview, and I really do mean this. I'm not here to take the decisions of projection away from the null blocks or from low sec space. Like, I'm not going to get in your way to say this is how it should be, because theoretically that's what I think it should be. I'm not the one that is out there fighting the big null wars, and I don't make a big deal about that. I'm transparent about it. But also, I need to be on the CSM so that I can be the one that's looking at sinks and faucets. I can look at the economic KPIs, and I'm not saying I'm the only one that does that, but I'm definitely in the minority. And Angry is very good at that as well, and I'll concede that any day, because I'd love to serve with Angry again on the CSM.
Angry, I think that's a good segue right there into our next CSM candidate, Angry Mustache. How angry is your mustache? Is my first question.
None. I don't have a mustache. I shaved it.
Oh.
So I was listening to what Oz was saying, and I figure, and I do figure there's a good good how do I say it? Continuation of that, which is that I'm running for much of the same reason that he is. It's a very similar platform, focused on industry, and the economics of Eve. And when I was listening, and I think it's a fortunate time that I'm running now, because right as I was preparing my CSM presentation, before we knew the Catalyst expansion, I did it on minerals and mining. And after I read the patch notes, or at least read Hobo Leaks, because they're not finalized patch notes yet, I sort of realized what CCP is getting at. Now, I haven't been on the CSM in the past year, so I don't know exactly if what I'm saying is the case. But following on from some things they said from the last time I was there, is that what CCP has done here is sort of put a cap and a pressure valve on minerals, in that because prismaticide responds to everything, there is no mineral which can be so scarce that it skyrockets the price for everything else, because prismaticide can be refined into every mineral. And that's something I sort of talked about to CCP before I left, which is that all resources should have two ways of obtaining them. One way is the smart way, which is efficient but requires skill and maybe limited to space to make it profitable. And the other way is the work harder way, where you have these inefficient backstops which allow all resources, which limits the effects of all bottlenecks, so that a ill-planned bottleneck like the initial exploration commodities for capital ships don't end up blocking the rest of the industry chain, because they're just so unaffordable and so scarce. So I think what CCP have done here is a good move, but the numbers aren't quite right to make this an actually effective at their job, so to speak. So we did run the numbers right before coming onto this show, and at the moment, it does not, at least with the current prices, prismaticide doesn't make sense to react. You should just refine it. And the other reason why we have done this is that I get a sense that CCP really hates the sort of static PvE that people have been doing, and this applies to much of nullsec. So perhaps with Equinox, they had the goal. I got the sense they wanted to sort of do away with the thing where an anomaly spawns in the ass end of nullsec nowhere, and the most profitable way to make money is to run that yourself undisturbed, 25 jumps from anyone else. Perhaps one of the goals of Equinox that was unstated is to change this paradigm, but it didn't really do the job. And when they tried to do it before with A0 sites, and they ended up being so short term and temporary that it could not affect player behavior. You weren't going to move for an A0 site simply because the reward isn't worth the effort. However, depending on how they tune this prismaticite thing, this could be almost like an incursion. Like, people do move around in space for incursions because incursions last for a long time and they pay significantly otherwise normal activity in nullsec. And occasionally in lowsec, when you have incursions in places, groups because space is hard to control in lowsec, groups will fight over incursion control. Although that's becoming rarer and rare. That's somewhat rare, but it does happen. And if this prismaticite thing is more long term, in that when this happens, you can mine this space for a week and it won't go away, then that does become worthwhile to move to in order to mine. And by controlling where this thing spawns, CCP can actually use this as a conflict driver. Say, like, will be a good example. Like, Curse is not a good example now because we own both sides of Curse. But suppose we had two alliances where one alliance had the imminency side of Curse and the other alliance had the Scalding Pass side of Curse, and then this thing spawning Curse. There could actually be conflict to see who gets to mine this stuff. And depending on and again, this is all, and the crux here is depending on the implementation. When we ran the numbers on this, the numbers were close but not quite there. So I think, of course, CCP did probably fed these initial numbers to the CSM and had them look over it to sort of sanity check it like a 5-year-old in the meeting room thing. But I don't think these numbers are quite there, and I think I can help them tune this, so to speak, so that the major feature added in this Catalyst expansion can serve the goal that CCP wants it to. And with that, I will yield my time to anyone else.
Question for you though. I have a couple questions while we're on the economy topic here, Angry. And first of all, somebody said in chat, Alaveron, and I probably said your name wrong because I can't read. Nobody's waging war over mining sites. What do you feel like that's true?
That is true right now. It might not be true if CCP tunes this properly.
Okay.
Because people do fight over other forms of PvE in contested space. To the person who asked that question, we have seen people fight over incursion sites and low sec, as I've mentioned. People fight over NPC Satoyos. People try to ninja those all the time. And back in the day, people used to fight for static complexes. If anyone remembers knows what those are. So basically, static complexes are DED sites that would respawn in the same system over and over again. And if you had control of that system, they printed a stupid amount of money and a dead space loot. And people did actually fight over those. I think what was the system? There was one in Catch that was really infamous for getting fought over. But I would say that yes, if CCP tunes it properly, people will fight over mining.
I mean, technically, isn't it fighting over mining if you fight over a moon drill, right?
I do remember conquest of some moon drills in Curse.
Yes, but once the fighting is for the moon drill, not for the right to mine the fract, because any moon drill that is being fought over is not being fracked. It's too dangerous for your miners to actually mine. That's the difference between fighting over moons and fighting over potentially these prismaticite sites.
I gotcha. And I guess I was more referring to your passive, the
Metanoxes.
Yeah, the Metnoxes that seem to be a driver of a lot of conflict. And I'll be honest, when those came into the game, I was kind of skeptical because I'm like, oh, great, we're going back to passive vision mining. People are going to have posses and snuff's going to be all over the game. But I think overall it's been a good change. Enough about what I think. It's not why we're listening to me. So, Hyprviper, I'll let you, next on the list, sir. Tell us about you and your campaign, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I am much more of a social person than in Eve when it comes to things. The economic side is not something that I am necessarily 100% on. That's why Angry Mustache is great for that. But my big thing is stuff I do with Goonswarm and Imperium together is I talk to a lot of different groups, both through diplomacy and through infiltration. So I do a lot of being able to see a lot of different groups and have a good perspective on how a lot of entities operate. Background for me, I've been playing for almost 20 years now, 18 years now for me. And one of the times that I was the most active in Eve is when I was in charge of my own alliance. And that's one thing that, so I have a very big fondness of small alliances that start from nothing, of random. My alliance that ran, I didn't even start. It was a good friend of mine. I came back from break and they're like, I don't want to run it. Can you run it? So I had to learn a lot about how to be an executor very quickly. And I would say I did an all right job, but not a great job. And being able to talk with other small alliances, I see a lot of the struggles that I had back when I did it a decade ago, and a lot of the new struggles for them. So a lot of the things I bring to the, hopefully if I get on the CSM 20 is there, I would say there's very few people that have as much perspective around New Eden, all the different groups, high sec, low sec, null sec, um, even a bit of wormhole that has contacts and people to chat with and see how they run things and what they would like to see improve. So, I mean, a lot of big things is smaller alliances are smaller by nature and have a lot more difficult time gathering income, starting off knowing what to do, having resources and services to even run alliances. These days, you need voice chat, text chat. I mean, granted, a lot of people have shifted to Mumble, which help. I'm sorry, Discord, which helps a lot. But there's a lot of stuff inside the game that you need extra help for. So, kind of being able to chat with other alliance leaders where they're struggling and where they would like to see help with both income generation and just retention and place to live is a big thing. I mean, not to toot the Imperium's own horn, but the shift out of Delve Quirius area has spawned a huge amount of activity. A lot of times when alliances move like that, they have people they set up, put there. In this sort of situation, we just left and said, whoever lives there lives there. Good luck and enjoy. And it just erupted, land grab. Um, who's going to live there? Alliances may, alliances broken. But my biggest thing for the health of the game and for long term, you have to give alliances the ability to build and grow and have a place to do it. So the more alliances, small alliances are going, you have a lot more members. They're all vested in that alliance and play more. The more we can have of those people that are vested in all these different alliances, have a place to live, build things up, we can have, new larger blocks go up. I think big thing is being able to allow these small groups to nurture and grow up without having to worry about, a block knocking on their door and saying, hey, give us this or else. So us that's been done long times in Eves and a lot of time in Eve, and I'd say that our shifting right to Horde's border is a good example of how well Goonswarm and the Imperium really cares about smaller alliances, because we understand we have a gameplay that we like to play. A lot of the smaller alliances were having trouble because they were getting stuck between two giant gorillas on two different sides of the playground. And each of the gorillas, Goonswarm, Horde, have to walk across where the other smaller people live, and they get trampled or manipulated to do certain things that they wouldn't necessarily do on their own. So we made it very easy for the groups to move through. A lot of people say that we, evicted people. No, we just, told them we would like to move there, and we give them, hey, we're going to make it easy. We're even going to pay you for your stuff. We're not going to just rip it away and be the evil meanies, because we want to see them grow. We want them to do well. So that is a big part of my thing. And last little bit, I like to chase shinies. A big fan of playing, obviously, even AARPGs. So I like to have chase items to go get. And when I've gotten them all, I want something new. So being able to help bring, hopefully, new ideas to the CSM and the CCP about giving ideas and stuff for, veterans like us that have a good amount of ISK and can do a lot of stuff, still want to log in and play and shoot and lose ships.
Legendary items. You got officer mods. I want orange ones. Like, something like that, man. That would be awesome. No, that's a great point. And Goons leaving Delve, we did see with Only Fleets and I think Solar Fleet. We had them on the Meta Show actually and talked and brokered some deals on the Meta Show live. Is there like anything that you feel like in the game from a CSM standpoint to help curb some of? And I'm going to use Frat as an example, and I don't want to get too much into Frat's the big bully. Are they worse than other alliances? My impression, I feel like they are worse to some degree because they don't just get up and leave like we saw the Imperium do with Delve. They just continue to just grow. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, Frat, although they're not as new now these days, it does make it harder, especially as there's less and less large blocks. Like before, you had, TESS is a large organization. You had N3. You had Pandemic Legion when they were relevant, and a number of different stuff like that. But there was a lot of decent sized groups, and that had a lot to do with the population in the game.
Yeah.
And that's where I think CCP does need to set up something. So, like what we did, like we left, and like here's three regions we don't care about. You take what you want, do what you want. Having space like that, it is, I believe, very important to be able to see these small groups thrive and survive, and just have the ability to try out nullsec. Right now, you have to shell out so much time, energy, and ISK to be able to even think about taking a system in nullsec. So when you look about that, okay, yeah, I got my little treasure pile, but is nullsec really worth it? I'm just gonna stay in high sec, sort of thing, and that's fine. I did that for the longest time, but then those people that are like, I'm ready to try out nullsec, I don't know how. A lot of times they go to rent. That's the way they know to do it with a small group. But if we make it um, a, a way for these budding or soon to be or new to be alliance executors, a way to test it out and see, okay, this is the baby step. Okay, this is, you get to try this and see it and see if you like it, and if you don't, these are kind of it's going to need to save that or keep that space. And then, okay, you want to go beyond that. Okay, now it's going to get harder and more difficult, and you have to then now fight blocks. So, but getting them to the point where they can build up and get to the point before they have to deal with blocks is going to be, I think, a huge boon, and just more people buying into the game and getting new people in, hopefully.
Yeah, and Troy said in chat, I think maybe NPC space is supposed to be kind of where you start, but that's such a meat grinder. And I've lived in NPC Null, and it just is. It's a tough place to live right now. So
I mean, one of the
Well,
issues
and then-
with
Go ahead,
NPC
Dave.
null is you end up in that position that was mentioned earlier, where you're pancaked between two forces, because that's essentially where most of the NPC regions are in null. They're in between two opposing groups.
Yeah, they're not really separated. And the one thing I would say about NPC nullsec is there's a comedian that I love, and he has a perfect quote for this. His name is Eddie Izzard. He's like, where's your flag? Do you have a flag? No flag, no country. And basically, it's a lot. People want to see their flag on Dotland. They want to see their alliance logo there, and NPC nullsec is a good place to kind of dip your feet in there. But what people really want to see is they want to see, like, I have taken this system. This is my system. Behold my flag, sort of thing.
No, 100%. And Alvaron, we'll get to your question here in a minute. I do want to make sure we give our last, but definitely not least, Zintage. Thank you for joining us today. It take a few to tell us about you and your platform, sir.
Yeah, you're just leaving the best to last. Totally not because I'm getting over a cold. No, I'm a current member of CSM 19. I'm moving on to CSM 20, or at least I should be. Number 1 on the Imperium ballot. It's not really a question. But my big thing has always been mostly ship balance. I'm an FC. I run the GSF fitting team, etc. We did finally get a decent chunk of fitting balance in the last major update. We want to get more of that in. Me and Sadao did a lot of work on the big super capital patch that we got recently. Sadly, Sadao burnt very brightly, but he's not running again. I think it's IRL, but so he's not running again this year. I'd love to have him, but we're pulling Young Puke in onto our ballot. I really like to work with Young Puke, even though we tease him and call him Fresh Vomit. Dose.
Fresh Vomit. Puke, if you're watching,
I'm
Puke
gonna
was
use
watching
that one
earlier.
next
Fresh
time.
Vomit. We are changing your name. I am going to make sure that gets changed with Sedition.
Yeah, so the big thing is CSM 19, we started a lot of big projects, and some of them have started to see fruition. We're starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel for Equinox. A lot of what Equinox still needs is ESI integration with everything, but the mechanics are finally there. So we're hoping to get to that. We've started bringing capitals back into the gameplay. So, like, we got the big buff to supers and titans. Titans got their big doomsday buff. There's a lot of HP to supers now. There's a lot of HP to titans that wasn't there. We reverted most to surgical strike. Got some of that rep power back into faxes. All of this. There's still more to do. Carriers still don't have a place at the moment. As you guys have seen from CCP's teasers, there is some carrier stuff coming in. I can't really talk about it, obviously, but it's coming. And the big thing is, we've started these projects, we need to keep them going, and I'd like to keep our fleet meta fresh, per se. How long were we stuck with F&I? Almost 3 years of F&I online. And we just really need to keep these balance patches coming and keep them flipping. Right now, we're at a place where the meta hasn't been defined yet, and I think that's good, and I think we need to keep it that way. Like, you see Maelstroms, you see Apox, you see Napox, you see Ravens. We're seeing more ship types than we have in years, and I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And this is something that's a little close to me, man, is when it comes to, like, and I'm going to scale it down to even like small gang and solo PvP. For a long time, it was always like, and like people ask me like, "Oh, Keith, how do you do this X, Y, and Z?" And it's always been like, you've got to find a way to bring a ship to the field and do something different with it, right? And when somebody sees an Hyperion, they know what a Hyperion does, and they know exactly how to counter it. And the game delved into, to your point, what became Ferox's Online, or we go back to Munin's Online, and it does this for a cycle of 2-3 years, where when a fleet lands on grid, you're like, okay, I know what this is. This is how I need to fight it. And to your point now, it's like, well, I don't know what the heck they're going to bring, right? There's a little more mystery to it, a little more strategy to it, where you've got to go look at their ship and see what the heck they're flying and be able to counter it. And I love that concept to be able to go out and keep that fresh, to your point.
100%, exactly. There's a mystery to it. Not everyone is the same. Even now, like us and Horde, like normally what you'd see in nullsec is everyone ends up with the same cookie cutter fit, and that's not the case right now. Us and Horde, we're running different Maelstrom fits from each other, and we use them differently, even though it's the same ship. And I think that's a really good thing that's come recently.
I definitely love that.
It did get a bit boring for a bit, as you said, with the Ferox navies online and then also Rogues online, because literally everybody was just stood at the same range from each other, just blasting each other, which isn't really fun for anyone. You're getting the kills,
especially with Rogues online, because what Rogues online turned into is the first one to put tracking dreads on the field won, because it's still kind of that, but there's more nuance to it now. But
yeah, because with the
tracking dreads are still very powerful.
With the Rogues and the Feroxes, you were literally just essentially sat there just shooting at each other and doing next to nothing else. It just got a bit boring.
I just want my Hall Dread to not die to 6 cap dreads, to be honest. I fed mine last night. Zintage, I need you to fix that for me. So
I'm not sure 6 cap dreads does sound about right for killing a Hall Dread, I think.
Yeah. Unfortunately, ruined my fun. Complained to my CSM. But that is awesome there, Zintage. I do want to open us up to, I know we usually run a little bit longer today, because I do want to, I'm sure there's some questions we have for the whole group here to get into. First one I have, and I think this is a great one for the group, Alvaron asked, and this is when Hyper was talking, but asked, there won't be any smaller alliances without them bending the knee to Winter Co, PanFam, or the Imperium. Is there anything, like, is there a way to address things in the game or anything to kind of like work away from that meta to encourage more like maybe regional powers and not just like superpowers that are all over the game?
I guess I will jump on this since this is kind of my realm of things. Now, I definitely have some ideas of how I think we could implement it with these small alliances getting different rooms. But for your statement, Alvaron, about people bending the knee to Winterco, Panfarm, or Imperium, I mean, that isn't necessarily correct. I mean, at least with the Imperium now, maybe the Imperium a decade ago, yes, that everybody would bend the knee or do the things, but that was also a lot of unfortunate direction from leadership because it caused a lot of backstuff. I'm sure the famous Viceroy program comes to my mind where Goons said, now all low sec bow to us. And this is when I was not in Goons. This is when I was on the opposite side. I'm like, these people think they can control low sec just because they declared. Stuff where, like, obviously Eve is a sandbox game, so being able to the players make the story. And in this situation, Goonswarm and the Imperium is writing the story of making it more room for smaller alliances that operate independently. I mean, we didn't give any of those people that lived there any restrictions, like you can't attack us, you can't touch us, you can't do anything like that. They can do whatever they want. We don't have any agreements with them. So I think it comes down to, obviously, if you poke the bear is going to come for a snack, but it isn't necessarily we're going to like, oh, evict you. But giving mechanics where, like I had mentioned earlier, where smaller alliances can do baby steps into nullsec and life as running an alliance. And I believe there's some tools in the game that CCP could expand upon, and more ESI stuff. Like the mining ledgers was a great step in the right direction. But just giving more tools so you don't need an entire IT team to run your alliance.
It's very true, between auth systems and everything else like that.
Yeah, you need now somebody that knows how to do that, and I sure so did not know how to do it when I was an exec, and I'm sure I was riddled with spies, and I was just like, I don't know how to do it. It's too much for me between work and then running the line.
Or how to even combat
Another
spies.
reason to vote for Ariel or Rim, by the way.
Yep.
He maintains the Alliance Auth, and so many groups that don't have their dedicated IT team rely on Alliance Auth to do anything.
Exactly.
Alliance
They
Auth is
do.
a great
And if you,
bit. It's a great bit
you
of
need
software.
Alliance Auth, you need IT to run it.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need someone with a basic understanding of how to run a server to be able to do it, but the amount of understanding you need is pretty basic on it. But that is a great tool, and it opens the door for a lot of corporations as well to keep their house in order. And if anyone's watching this and doesn't use it, I suggest you do.
Yeah.
Use Alliance.
But yeah, like calculating taxes, how does tools for alliances to actually get income? There's very minimal things besides saying, okay, now we're doing an op to get ore for the alliance for something like that. So there's a number of different things. There's one thing I am good about is think of unconventional ideas. So I'm hoping to use that to slam CCP with plenty of ideas that hopefully one will work out well and get input from the rest of the CSM people.
Alvaron, in it is the Alliance we all wish we could be, man. They gave some of their space to Try, though. I don't know if I count Try as like a small group. I mean, I guess they are, but
They're tiny.
They need space to regrow again.
that's right. I like
What version of Try are we on now?
like
14?
6.0.
They're trying, guys.
No, but that's awesome that they're doing that now. I'd love to see. I mean, even like was said earlier, when the Imperium just left the power vacuum into Delve, and we saw the groups that came out there and were able to expand. I want to see more of that. I'd love to see more of that. I'd love to see Frat like shrink a little bit and imply that so bigger groups come in. That's why we had Sapporo Jones on from Test, and I know Test was a big alliance, but they're nowhere compared to what they used to be. I mean, we even had Headliner on, but having those alliances an opportunity, it doesn't have to be Test or PL, but grow into kind of a regional power, that kind of thing, and be able to contest at least regionally different groups. I think it's healthy for the game to have that conflict. Mick, I have a question for you, man. Is there anything we're doing with wormholes, or any plans to make them more accessible to the common folk? Those of us who live in the dirty, what is it, K space? We live in K space. To come in and day trip, does it make it do wormholers want more traffic?
Yeah, we want to kill you.
Oh, okay.
Come in. Seriously. Bring your Kiki blobs and stuff and let's frag out. Like, the problem is there's not really a ton of motivation to come in right now. And that kind of goes back to the reason why I would love to see some passes done, especially in terms of industry, because that's some of the most accessible content that exists in Eve. It's like, oh, I see a rock, I'm going to go pull stuff from it. It would be cool if we had something that was more accessible in wormhole space as well, so people could say, oh, well, I don't have a blinged out marauder that can run these combat anoms, but maybe I can go in there and I can huff some gas, or I can mine some rocks that are, unique to this area of space that would actually be worthwhile for me to do.
So I think if drifter holes get used a lot by blocks in Zintage, I think you echoed this, Dave, as a transit, right? To be able to project. We'll get into projection and questions on that. But to be able to project, and one of the things I think wormholes will get used as much is because, well, you've got to map them out. Is there CCP seems to be trying this, and we've seen other games do this. I think Blizzard's trying to incorporate the different third-party mods that get used in their game. And I know wormholes are a big one where we use different mapping tools. Is it in the realm of possibility to have an internal mapping tool within the game without me having to go download something else and use it elsewhere or whatever it may be?
I would certainly hope that it's in the realm of possibility. I will say it's not something that I have personally spent a lot of thought on, because a lot of the tools that are out there are easy to access, they're public, and they don't require any invasive scopes from ESI. So, I'm sure it could be, but would I rather CCP spend the dev time somewhere else? Yeah, I think that there's time that could be spent better elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea where you're talking about having conflict drivers and wormholes, because other than if you go into somebody's wormhole, they run away and they go sit in their structure, well, then you have to bash your structure to get them to go do anything. There's no middle ground where you guys can force them to fight like you see in Null and everywhere else. So Definitely
I think
love that coming from you.
I think if I had the choice of CCP working either on integrating like a wormhole mapping tool or new content, new sites, new something for wormholes, I think most people would go for the latter, and I would as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree.
On the note of mapping, though, they've announced their 2D map, which is essentially Dotlan in the game. Now, I'm intrigued to hear everyone's thoughts on how much that would actually be used, because for me, one of the benefits of Dotlan is it's not in my client. I can have it on another monitor and read the map.
Yeah.
I think
So
people go ahead, Zintage.
we actually talked about that exact thing. I can't really say what was said about it, but we would like to see it come out and be able to put it on a second monitor. I can't say it would ever happen if it does, but it's one of the things we asked for. The big worry with Dotlan is the guy that runs Dotlan doesn't play Eve anymore. And he hasn't for a long time. So Dotlan's kind of been limping along where he's just been updating it to be nice to the players. And there was no replacement for Dotlan. So that's one of the big things with the 2D map. It's really nice that we'll have something when Dotlan does finally pass.
Yeah, I do remember a few months back where you try and open Dotlan and it would just crash within about 2 minutes. Most infuriating thing ever, actually. But no, fair point.
Yeah, no,
I
like
think that
open
go ahead.
Dotlan right now, go look at a system, and it will still tell you like the minerals that are there
Mm-hmm.
from what it used to be with its security class in like 2009.
Yeah, it still gives you a lot of information that you just don't need, essentially.
It still has, if you look at the map, it still has squares in systems that used to have outposts when all of them have been turned into faction forts. And I think there's maybe like 2 that still have their rigs.
It still has all the old moon data as well.
I think it's going to take a long time for veterans to switch behavior, of course. I mean, we're all like, there's their learned behavior for everyone, but CCP also has to focus on players joining now or players that have joined rather recently. And I think for them, it's always daunting to see that everything is done outside of the client. And I think the more they can take the best of what is there and put it into the client, at the very least it's going to make people aware of something like that exists and then move out there. And so I really do like what they have done with putting certain things that are not insanely, that don't take an insane amount of dev time, and put them into the client, because it does help immersion, especially for new players that are coming in that are not feeling like, oh my god, I'm overwhelmed because every 2 minutes I gotta exit the game that I just started playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, a fair point was raised in chat as well, that they could make it a separate thing you launch from the client, from the launcher. Therefore, also, if you just want to quickly check something on the map, you don't have to launch the entire game to be able to quickly do
Well, well, on top of that, you could even do something like a lot of games that have their information on their own website. Like, imagine if
Battlefield
you
does
just
it.
open up the Eve map or on the Eve website where you can go and see what's going on in the Eve universe. You know, see, okay, stuff's going on, and that way you can kind of check on it outside of, in-game client, or you can do both. But yeah, I think definitely having something where CCP allowed that to be outside the game would be really handy.
Yeah, I see where someone was talking about how this isn't a Dotland killer, and it really isn't yet. But the thing is, with almost all mechanics that CCP puts in, well, at least the ones that don't die, this is something that they can build on and add more things to. So, for example, one of the things I asked for that I thought would be really cool on the 2D map is being able to see the largest citadels that you have docking access to. Like, being able to see that on the 2D map. So that's that's something Dotland can't do, but
Is that a
that
jump
2D
planer?
map could do.
That would save so many annoying MS Paint maps you have to make.
Does the 2D map have a jump planer? Did the 3D map have a jump planer? It had jump ranges on there.
The 3D map has like this bubble, but since it's 3D, it's not perfect kind of thing.
Yeah.
The 2D map does from the CC thing, like you can see jump ranges with the 2D map.
Really just want to be able to jump play, and that's the only thing I use Dotland for. But speaking of jumping and jump ranges, this is a question. This has come up several times on our other chats with CSMs, and I'd love to hear this group's thoughts on it. Is the current state of projection, being able to project power in EVE Online, in a healthy place right now?
I'm gonna go with yes and no. Certainly there can be problems. You have to put a lot of effort in to take down someone's road. Like, we have these super highways that will cross the map with our Ansiplex networks. But if you're willing to put in the effort, I think the perfect example is actually Init versus Frat right now. For about a week there, after that first declaration of war, the only Ansiplexes that Frat had left that were usable were the ones in Gemnet and in Veil of the Silent. Their entire Western Ansplex network completely turned off, useless. And that's the kind of thing where if you can't use your Ansplexes to get over there, that space is actually vulnerable. The only reason it wasn't attacked is time zone. You didn't want to have to wake up at 4 a.m. to go in Tosis Frats off. That is literally the only reason.
Time zone tanking.
Thing I will say about the whole pre-reffing hostile jump bridges for timers is it gives people in another time zone potentially something to do for that timer, even if they can't turn up. So, like, say we've got a timer in Horde space in USTZ, a job for the EUTZ guys could be isolating the timer, so it gets them involved rather than
correct.
Oh, they
Every time zone is now important in a war, even if it's a time zone like a EU versus an EU group. Every time zone's important because every time zone can do something to affect the time zone you're actually fighting in now.
Yeah. Seema wants to know if Zintage will place Mountain Dew Baja Blast on the NES store. The real question, Zintage. I'm just reading the chat here.
I'm sorry, Seema. Quaif has a monopoly. I'm not allowed.
There you go, Seema. That is your answer. No Baja Blast on the NES store, Seema. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, that's a good point as far as, it takes a lot of effort to bring down those Ansiplexes. I'm a little, I know there's a lot of back and forth on this, and I've seen it from the other side of the token when you're in a smaller group, a mid-sized group, and blocks are able to get from their staging to wherever you're fighting and third party those fights. And maybe this is more of a social thing. And I've always kind of felt like it's more of a how players play and that kind of thing. It's like, I don't want blocks coming every time I drop dreads because they want to like, oh, I got to go get 60 bill or 80 bill in dread kills because these low set groups are fighting. Like, is there like some kind of middle ground that says, hey, blocks can still project, but they're not going to be able to show up to these fights? I don't know where that's at. And I think that's where some of the heartburn is around projection.
Thing here to remember is we're not the ones inviting ourselves to these things.
Fair.
We're not seeing you drop 100 dreads and then showing up. We're showing up because you picked up the bat phone, and then your friend picked up the bat phone, and then they picked up the bat phone, and we're showing up because you invited us. We have our own stuff to do, and
Or was it?
we're not going to say no to just killing very expensive ships with our cheap
Or
ships.
was it Hyprviper that picked up the bat phone to start the bat phone chain? I feel like
No.
that is the real question.
I mean, that is.
I mean, that's some next level social engineering, right?
I mean, yeah. There is also other social engineering I like to do more.
Fair enough.
But
Fair
on
enough.
the bat phone chain thing there, Zintage is quite right. There's a lot of times where we literally sit there and go, we're not going to get involved unless insert people here do, and then the other party calls insert people here. So we're like, okay, then you brought it on yourself.
Yeah, it's very often that I get a DM asking me to come to some low sec fight, and I'm like, I'm not showing up unless Horde shows up. And then Horde
That's fair.
shows up. And then I show up. But for the majority, we're not going to get involved in low sec unless we're bat phone. Like, neither side's going to. We have no reason to.
Fair. That's fair. And I think there's definitely some truth to that. If you feel like you're on the losing side, you're like, hey, you know what? I need some more help. Economics does play in this, and Oz has had some great input leading up to this. But as Oz said earlier, he's not going to tell us where to put our spaceships. Isn't that
What
right?
about
I'm not.
1K?
Funnily enough, one of the most lucrative times in Eve is when the whole of nullsec is bashing each other's heads in, because there's a lot of stuff trading,
Absolutely.
or there's a lot of people
will
just
buy and
buying
sell
up
them.
cheater.
So would that be Oz? You would be on the side of it. You correct me, like, and you don't have to necessarily pick a side, but am I right in this thinking that you'd be on the side of whatever encourages more wars? Because that encourages more money just going around. Like you're blowing things up, so people have the reason to make more things and buy more things, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've been talking about money velocity, its velocity in the last couple of MERs so much because, yeah, it has died down a lot. And recently, mostly, yeah, we're also seeing less Plex and LSI and extractors traded now that there are fewer sales. But even if you take those out of the equation and you look at the velocity of ISK, so how much are people trading, how much is each ISK trading back and forth, we have seen that drop for years and years, for essentially 5 years continuously. And so that is a big concern of mine. I do think we're seeing a trend where you have all this ISK, it's sitting around, it's not doing anything, veterans are sitting on it, there's no reason to spend it, there's no huge wars, and in essence, the only good thing that comes out of that is a little bit of protection for inflation, because it can cause inflation if it goes wild, this velocity. But overall, no, of course I'm on the side of destruction. I mean, without destruction, there's nothing in EVE Online. I mean, like I don't want to play a building simulator where there's no demand side, and destruction is the demand side, 100%. So contrary to popular belief, I'm 100% on the destruction side.
You heard it from our unofficial EVE Online's unofficial economist. Destruction, that is the name of the game. And on that note, though, Dave, do you want to take us out? We're coming up to an ad break. So if we go into the ad break, I would encourage you to subscribe. You can hear us on Dave taking us out.
Yeah, so let's go around with some final thoughts. Let's start with Oz, even though he just kind of gave one. But let's start with Oz.
Yeah, guys. I mean, if you're, if you're happy with the work that I've been doing, if you want a level-headed professional economist on here that makes sure that CCP doesn't break the economy, then please vote for me. I'm on the side of destruction, and I love Rorquals in space, and I think super capital should be cheaper. Bye-bye.
Love it.
Angry?
Let's Mick, because there's only one thing the Imperium needs to say.
Oh, I was going to say that at the end, but yeah. Mick?
Go ahead, Mick.
Sure, I'll go ahead and say a few words. No, just first off, thank you for having me. This has been great. I've enjoyed getting a chance to chat with some former CSM, current CSM, and prospective CSM. It's been wonderful. Keith, always great catching up. If you think that wormholes need some love, and by that I mean more than 3 bullet points in a patch note called "From Wormholes with Love," then vote for me. We've addressed a lot. We've got more to do. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Mick.
Alrighty. Right. Which Imperium member here wants to say the quote? Because we know what's going to be said.
I'll do it. I forgot to key up earlier. The quote is, of course, vote early, vote often, vote exactly as the state tells you to.
And
There
with,
it is.
And with that, these are the CSM candidates, everybody. And we will see you next time. And as Angry said, you have the right to vote exactly the way you are told. Goodbye. Hey, the credits roll. Wait.